Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice. This show is an unrehearsed look into my creative process. I'm Stuart. I'm a 3D artist, illustrator, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back for another episode, number 211 this week. I think this week we'll almost sort of view as like a quick tip or like a feature overview of this new tool, this new function in Cinema that I discovered recently. And we'll pair it up in a few ways and maybe sculpt a little tree. Not sure if this will be a super long episode, but I wanted to share something that I've been playing with a lot recently. So let's dig in. Without further ado, let's dig in. So I've added just a simple sphere to my scene. I'm going to turn on my live viewer for this Octane window. And what we're going to do is, actually here's another little, let's call it a sub-quick tip. I'm going to hit Shift-C. That's going to bring up this command line, and you can really search for anything here. You could add a cube. If you forget where things are, you just search for them here, right? And what I'm going to do is type in random. We want one of these random fields, right? Which is something that it's a MoGraph feature. I couldn't ever find it in these MoGraph, what do you call them? Like these MoGraph menus. So that's weird. Hey, thanks, Ben. Thanks for the comment. I've actually been playing with the audio settings in my streaming software a little bit recently, so the audio sounds bad. Actually, I thought I had improved it. How's it coming through? Is it a bit noisy? Is it a bit loud? Weirdly, seeing any viewers popping up, but Ben's there, then must be some viewership. Oh. Probably loud. Okay, let me try this. That change things? Is that any better? Sometimes, starting off with audio issues. Anyway, so we've got this random field, which is going to generate sort of noise or patterns in a 3D space, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and just take both of these and add them to a volume mesher. So it doesn't necessarily do anything at first, but what I want to do is go inside this mesher. Let's add this first to a volume builder. Right, we'll add both of these to the volume builder. Then you can see the volume builder automatically starts making geometry with this random field. I'll turn off the sphere for now. And you can see sort of what this random field is doing. Right, we've got this field of noise that isn't by default geometry. If you add it to a volume mesher, it becomes geometry, right? Let me turn the sphere back on, and this is the way that I typically like to use it. If you take this random field and set it to subtract, then it starts removing the geometry in the form of noise from whatever other object is in your hierarchy here inside the volume builder. So we're not getting much at the moment, but if I go inside the volume field and set the random mode to noise, then we start getting a lot more control. Noise type, so you get different results depending on the type of noise that you select. What I'm going to do is just to get a little bit higher resolution, I'm going to turn this voxel size to about 5. Now we got better resolution. We can take this random field and obviously change the seed. We can also change the scale. It's going to give us bigger bits of noise. And when we go to remapping, we can also adjust sort of the open and close values. You can even make a cool animation just keyframing in this value. but you can adjust things to be a little more open or a little more closed, depending on what you need, by adjusting some of these sliders. Right? That's pretty cool. You can also adjust the fall off here. Set it to curve for even a little bit more control. Kind of nice. What we can do is we can take a look at a few different types of noises too. So instead of electric, we could try like a Selvarinoy. Kind of nice. Again, you can play at different scales. Went up to like 1,000 here. Oh, that's 100. Something different, right? 100. Cool. So you can see how those have different effects. But for what we're going to do today, I'm going to try Luca. It's going to work pretty well. Scale is about right in this range, but I want to open it up a little bit. And let's make it a bit larger. Let's say like 600. Probably better. What I also want to do here is it's a little bit jagged for my tastes. So what I want to do is just add a smooth layer to this hierarchy. We can grab that, just pull it down a little bit, because that did really remove a lot of our detail. If we smooth that out a little bit, it's starting to look all right. But I'm also going to turn off this random field because I kind of don't want to look at it. Right, and another thing we could do is let's add this whole bit of this whole hierarchy to a null and add a smoothing former. That's going to give us just a little bit more smoothing as well. What's up, Seb? How you doing? Today we are playing with this random field inside of a volume mesher. And then, of course, what you can do is, you can swap out any type of geometry here as long as this random field is set to subtract, right? So now we've got it subtracting from a cone. Kind of a neat effect. Animated this, maybe you get like a neat fire look. But that would work really well, actually. Some of these noises are going to animate automatically. You could turn up the animation speed. You have the animation speed at like 8%. Let's try. This noise up. Have sort of a cool flame effect. In fact, I kind of want to play with that one day. Not today, though. Okay, we're going to try something else. So I'm going to hit undo a bunch of times, get our sphere back. Go. I'm going to get a different seed. Pretty good. Turn up the smoothing just a little bit. Another way to get more smoothing in detail is just to make the voxel size smaller. increase the resolution or the density of the mesh, of course. Go in here, grab the smooth layer, maybe turn that up just a little bit. Cool. That's looking pretty neat. Make a little bit of a trunk, create a tree with this. So I'm going to add this to a connect object because by default the cylinders caps are not connected. Super annoying. Fix that cinema. Scale this down a little bit, increase the height. Trunk of our tree. What I'm also going to do is make a copy of this. Move our axis down to the bottom there. Scale this down. Go to the origin point of this secondary branch on the center. Scale that down. Hold Control, rotate it around. I think this is a really cool stylized tree that we can then duplicate and get a lot of variations on since it's all procedural. Let's call this tree. Add guys trunk. Now let's also go ahead and add in landscape. There is our tree. Go ahead and add in some lighting, just a simple octane highlight. Go ahead and texture it a little bit. Recently been playing with subsurface scattering inside of Octane. It's a little bit different from what I'm used to. I'll show you sort of the way I've been handling it. All right. I actually was playing with the adaptive slider here. I don't think we need that. I think we can live with the amount of resolution on the mesh as it is. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add specular material. Add that to our upper area. Now, by default, the specular is this kind of glassy looking material, which looks pretty sweet, but we don't need most of this. So I'm going to turn off the reflection and actually pretty much all of these channels except for medium and roughness and reflection. I turn index on as well. We're going to turn most of these down. Turned way down. Roughness gets turned up. It's kind of a cool look already, isn't it? A reflection can come way down. Leave that on hair. Now, medium is what, you know, the subsurface scattering usually resides within. I think medium creates, I'm not sure what the textbook definition of it is within Octane, but I think it actually starts to refer to the interior volume of a mesh, right? Because you can use mediums in terms of, what are these called? These fog volumes, they refer to medium as well. But in the case of this texture here, this will be where we're able to add our scattering. That changes things immediately. Once we add this scattering medium, we can go in there, start adding colors and playing with the density. And once you get used to the way Octane handles the subsurface scattering, it's actually a lot nicer than the way it's done in the standard renderer, in the physical renderer inside of Cinema. So I'll just add a color with scattering and absorption. Absorption, I think, refers to the rate of absorption. I think that's typically just a grayscale color, right? Like a grayscale value. And inside scattering is where we can start adding color to it. Not working. Now, I think by default, this invert is turned on, which should allow us to just have, there we go, a greenish tint. And when it's not inverted, the opposite value on the color wheel is what will get scattered. I think in earlier versions of Octane, you had to go find the opposite value of the color you want it to actually appear. It's a little bit confusing, but they've turned on inverted absorption automatically. What's up, Nathan? Making sort of a procedural tree here. I'm going to add a little bit of green to our absorption channel here. And now we've got, as you can see, some pretty nice subsurface scattering. Another thing that's going to make your subsurface scattering look a lot better, and this took me a minute to realize, is a couple different lighting modes you can set in Octane. Direct lighting, this DL, is the default. If you click over to path tracing, things get a little more realistic, and the light will penetrate a little deeper to your model. And I think the shadows tend to be less contrasty, and you get more of an overall GI sort of look. The thing is, when you set your lighting mode to path tracing, your samples get ridiculously huge. So I always want to come in here and set these down to something more manageable. What I also like to do is GI clamp value should get turned much lower. A lot of people just set it to 1, 10, and that's gonna prevent some of this noise and what they call fireflies from showing up. You get these like really, once I turn that back up, oh, that's caustic blur, wrong value. Once I turn this back up, you can see things tend to be noisier, and there tend to be these little hot points of light, these little like fireflies, people call them. If you turn it down to 1, whoops, wrong slider again. That was set at 10. Yeah, clamp needs to be set at 1. There we go. Cool. Now we can play with the density a bit here too. I think we want to turn that up. The density is going to control the look a lot, and that's basically the amount to which light can penetrate the surface, sort of the density of the medium. And the higher you turn it, you can see the more opaque looking the material tends to look. As you get lower, the more see-through it tends to look. Let's turn this to, yeah, somewhere in like the 30 range. lighter the color on absorption value, I think the more penetration you're going to get with light as well. Right on. Are you an Octane user, Nathan? Another thing you could do is you go over to opacity, turn that on, and just bring it down a little bit. Maybe if we turn that down to like 95, we get a little bit more of a see-through effect, which is kind of nice. If you go too low on that, you can start getting kind of a glassy look, especially if the roughness is low. Turn the reflection way up, and that gives us more of a glassy look, but I'm gonna keep that pretty low. Keep roughness kind of high. Another thing we could do with opacity that might be neat is to add a noise. Create little places where you see through the mesh a little bit more, which kind of breaks up the form and maybe gives us more of a see-through tree kind of look. Kind of nice, actually. Get a little bit of showing up and disappearing there. Cool. Now I'll make just a simple diffuse material for the trunk. Get a nice brownish color. Of course, the cool thing about this, I can just create a duplicate, take this guy, scale him up a bit. All right, and then I can go into this random field, get a different value. Want it to be a little more open, I can do that. Or closed, I can do that as well. And of course, just clicking through the seed, different effects. Try this shape. Instead of the sphere, let's use a capsule. I'm going to add that to the hierarchy. Make sure this random field is above the capsule. and set to subtract, right? This capsule's bigger. Box a little bit bigger so it would cover this full capsule. Right. Change the noise. What we could also do is play with, of course, different noise types. Of course, I'm just kind of guessing and experimenting here. These aren't all great results, but sorts of things to accomplish. I don't think Hama's a great one. Kind of clicking through these. Oops. Do electric. Pretty cool. Yeah, it's just a little bit darker. Slightly more realistic look, let's call it. I think it was too saturated before. Now we can copy that material, turn off opacity. Try that on this new style of tree. No, I don't like it as much. Going back. There's another one, and let's try one more shape out. Copy this. Add tone. Again, looks all broken. We just got to make sure things are in the right order here. Now that's set to subtract. Good. Things are in the right order. I'm going to remove some of these additional branches that we don't need at the moment. Collar. Also going to help to make the top radius a little bigger. Yeah. Let's try a different noise type here. Make those openings a little smaller too. Go to the field. Try maybe stipple. You might find that you'll need to adjust the scale of the noise. Not showing up at all, really. You got stipple. All right. Let's try something else. Wavy turbulence. What you got? There we go. That's a little better. That is pretty cool. Here we've got a range of different looks with the same, all using the same technique. Pretty cool. Now I'm going to texture the ground quickly. Go to a nice light green color. Scattering to add a little texture and grass to the ground plane here. I'm going to add a plane 1 by 5 by 1 by 1. Probably be thinner. Our blade of grass. I'm going to hold Alt, add it to an octane scatter. And I'm going to add this floor plane, this landscape to the octane scatter. And go to surface. Scale our plane up a little bit. I think what I need to do is go to change the orientation here so we get some visibility. There we go. Make this plane a little larger, more visible. We got to turn the count way up. And texture that. I'm going to add a noise shader here just to break up the placement. Interesting to do is to make a couple copies. This plane, so we have some variety in the ground. I'm going to add a few height segments. Grab those top 2 points. Go to soft selection. Turn this way down. A little bit of a bend. Still too high. Add a bit of a bend. Higher. All right. That again. Taller. And this direction a little bit. I'm just sort of breaking it up, making some different shapes for our scatter here. And we covered this a few episodes ago, but adjusting min and max value. Then, of course, the low and high clip in here allow you to alter the distribution of your different clones. So let's also do this. I'm going to grab all of these. I'm going to go to simulate. I'm going to go to cloth and add a cloth surface. Let's add a little bit of thickness, grass. It'll catch shadows better. And the great thing about Octane Scatter is how stable it is. Right now I'm at 160,000 clones. It's pretty responsive. Not so bad. The action tends to have a slightly different color, slightly darker green for the grass itself. Cool. There's one other thing you could do. Try this technique again. What I'm going to do is hide everything else. Let's make a cube. Similar technique. I'm going to hit Shift C in random field. One of those. Fill it up a little bit so we can see it. Add that to a volume builder. Both of these guys. Set the random field above the cube, hit subtract, starting to break it up a little bit. Let's add this volume builder to a volume mesher, starting to turn it into actual geometry. Set this to noise. Noise type, I'm going to go, let's try Naki. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the scale really big. Let's try 1,000. Try 1,500. It's quite large now. Also adjust the relative scale. Typically, I'd be going for more detail and turning up or turning down the voxel size. But with this one, I'm going to actually double it and make the voxel size about 20, because if you want to make some rocky formation, you can use a similar technique, but instead of subtracting this random field from sphere, we're doing it from a cube, and we're doing it at a larger scale. This is in an effort to create some sort of rocky kind of surfaces. Something like this might be interesting. I can just copy this whole thing and just hit C. Turn it into the geometry. Back on. And this is just a really great technique that you can use to generate a number of organic style shapes. If we were making a whole piece, you could go ahead and position this kind of thing, landscape, sort of rocky outcrop. Pretty cool. Maybe set that Fong angle really low. A little bit of a low poly look. And grab individual points and kind of fine tune the way you wanted this thing to look. But there's something nice about using procedural techniques to generate randomness for your scenes, especially when you're dealing with organic shapes. One final thing we can do, just to make it look a little cooler, is add a fog volume. Go into my overhead view, kind of cover our whole scene with this. First, I'm going to set this voxel size to like 50, just so it runs a bit smooth. turn the edge feather up. This will soften the edges a little bit. And then we go into medium again. Here's another medium like the one we discussed earlier in the episode. Now this is sort of like our density inside of the object. So medium, we go in here. Similar thing, there's displacement, absorption, and scattering. These come pre-populated with gray values. What I like to do is turn these a little bit bluish, kind of a light blue color. And just drag this guy down into the other scattering box. And then our density is at 100, which is too much. You could turn that higher. Everything gets invisible. But really, what you want to do is turn it low. And it's surprising just how low the values need to go to create the sort of foggy effect that you want. Like this is less than 1. Here it is at 1. It starts at 100, which is pretty high. Normally I wind up turning it down to like, less than half. Nice usually to have just kind of a subtle effect. 0.015, somewhere in there. Not bad. Make this a little more saturated, a little lighter. Scattering, go up slightly. So let's go up a good amount. And then again, we can use noise to affect the distribution. Let's make this like 10,000 in scale. Go really high contrast on the high and low clip values here. Let's go to 1,000, might be a better size. Now you can see, I'll zoom in a bit, see better. You can see that certain areas have more fog applied. Turn up the density so you can see that a bit more obviously. See how the density is really broken up here. There's a noise texture that's applied almost as a mask. Starts masking things out. See, here we can still see through to the tree a little bit, but over here it's like almost entirely covered up. Gives us just a little bit more of a realistic and organic application. Let's go up. Oh, it's 800. Scale it down a little bit. Right. Cool, so this isn't like a finished illustration that we made this week. Almost sort of like a quick tip, like a technique overview, which might be useful. Actually, let me know if you'd like to see more finished illustrations or if you think kind of technique overviews like this are something you'd like to see from the practice more frequently. Increasingly, I've been enjoying spending more and more time, like actual physical hours, working on each illustration, adding more details and things like that, and to try to do a quote-unquote finished illustration in the 2-hour time frame that I've allotted for myself in the practice is a little, I don't know, a little bit tight to try and manage. Also notice that sometimes when I'm rushing towards the end, the quality of the illustrations can go down a little bit, which can be okay. Not everyone's going to be hit cleanly out of the park. That's all right, but let me know if you like this format, if you like just doing sort of a technique overview, and I can share some things that I've learned recently And if so, what sort of things would you like to see? The other thing I'd love to know is if you do wind up using this technique that we discussed today, using this random field along with the volume mesher, if you created anything besides trees or rocks that you found interesting. Actually, while I got you here, let's see if I can show you something. Let's see. There was a character I used. Here's something I created, actually. I wasn't planning on sharing this necessarily, but this is an animation I created by using the same technique. I had the smoothing turned way up, as you can tell, but then I went ahead and animated the noise values inside of the, the random field. And I set up a loop period that matched the length of the animation I was going for. So this creates sort of a seamless looping animation, which is really cool. The other guy, let's see if I can find this. That's not it. Well, that's kind of fun. Nice depth of field on that. Here is, well, got it. There's the frames. Here's something I created using that. Use a vertical noise to create a stylized flame. Yeah, absolutely. I bet if you used a cone and some of these noise values and animated them, you could make a really cool flame. Here's what I was looking for. All right, so I animated up the scale and sort of the clipping of those noise values and just applied them to this sphere with a face. And then what I also did was rotated the volume itself, the random field. I rotated that around the sphere. So the mask that was being applied to the sphere actually moved around as the animation took place. So we've got two things going on here, like both the rotation and the changing values inside that random field. So there's a lot of neat things you could accomplish with these techniques. So I'd love to know if you found them useful, if you found this format useful, and if you wind up using this technique, please would love to see what you guys wind up creating. You could do that by just like tagging me on Instagram if you wind up sharing it, or if you go to diligence.studio, you can check out my email address, or you can drop something in the comments below on this YouTube page. So let me know. Would love to see what you guys create. If you found this video useful, share it with a pal. Would appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button. New videos every Tuesday. If you want to keep up with me and the work that I'm doing, hit me up at DLGNCE on Instagram, the other social medias. As I mentioned, the website is diligence.studio, where you can see the sort of most up-to-date body of work. And appreciate y'all tuning in for a sort of quick tip technique overview this week. And until next week, this is Stuart saying thanks, y'all. See you later.